Joining me here today for ASUG in Action, Tammy Datri with Grain Healthcare and Gabe Orthous with McKesson, members of our ASUG SAP Strategic SIG. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today. Now, we've talked a lot about the Strategic SIG over the last 2 days, special interest group, 2 days, but also last 2 years, born out of some questions and concerns from our business objects community. And I wonder, Gabe, you're the co-chair of the Strategic SIG. Tell me a little bit about what your 2 years have been like and a little bit about what you're doing here at conference.
Okay, so sure. So the Strategic SIG started because of an influencer summit that occurred 2 years ago. And out of that summit, what happened was that the business objects community came out to ASUG and said, we're having issues. We're having issues with the product, we're having issues talking to SAP, and we don't feel like we're being listened. And so Bridget, the CEO of ASUG, came to us and said, why don't we create a strategic SIG, an overarching group of people with leadership that will take care of the top 4 or top 5 issues that the business objects community, and only the business objects community, is seeing in the ecosystem. So that's how it got formed. And there were 4 primary tracks that got started, one on education, one on roadmap, one on support, and one on SAP integration with business objects. So those were the main 4 tracks that occurred. We put leadership on top of those 4 different pillars, and then on top there were 2 co-chairs for the strategic SIG. So that's kind of where we came from. For the past 2 years, we've done a lot of surveys, we've done a lot of education, we've been with point of contacts from the SAP side of the house and trying to resolve these issues. So that's been the last 2 years. Moving forward, we've also had an influencer summit here on Sunday, right before the SBOUC conference, and people came out and also gave us their point of view of what was going on in the community, and they also saw what we have provided for the past 2 years to this community as far as deliverables and the good things and the benefits that come out of the strategic SIG.
So Tammy, education, one of those pillars. You are the chair of that special interest group area.
Yes.
Tell me why, number 1, why is education so important? What are you addressing? And number 2, maybe some of the successes you've had.
Super. Well, I think what happened with the business objects community, especially with the introduction of the 4.0, what we saw was we've really got a combination of end users now. We've got the traditional business objects users that want to learn more about the 4.0 platform, and what we found is that many of us are seasoned vets, and we're looking for ways to get what we want to call Delta courses, courses with just the information that we need to see that has changed. You've got new users, primarily your ERP type users, coming on board that are new to the business objects world and needing to see those. There have been a lot of gaps in the education offerings in the past with a lot of logistic type things in terms of signing up for courses, guaranteed to run or not guaranteed to run, and even the quality and the availability of some of the courses that are happening. So what the education segment of the SIG has done is we've actually, each one of the 4 sections we have, we've been paired up with what we call a SME, a subject matter expert, who is somebody who's very, very knowledgeable about that. So I've paired up with Paul Grill with Infosol, who is a certified business objects education partner. And then we've paired up with an SAP point of contact. Beth Christopher is our current point of contact. And basically what we've done is gone out to the business objects community and said, what are your pain points? What are the things that we'd like to see? I mean, what are the things we like? But what are the areas that we can work on? And what we've done is we've built a LinkedIn group that we're using that is very tight for just conversation and discussion about the different points. And both SAP and the business objects community is able to participate in that, and it gives us a great place to discuss our issues and concerns.
And so with education, you're delivering education year-round through webcasts, through ASUG and the ASUG communities, but also here at the conference.
Yes, we actually, as part of the Strategic SIG, what we heard from our people was that we'd like to know more about what the Strategic SIG is and the work that they're doing, and even SAP has kind of come to us and said, we'd like to learn a little bit more about what's going on too. So we've been able to actually establish a separate track here at the conference. Started last year in a small way, but this year in a much better way for sessions regarding all of what the Strategic SIG is doing. So there is a separate track just for that.
So it seems like you're growing, and I know, Gabe, you mentioned that 2 years ago the Influencer Summit is really what kicked off the Strategic SIG, and I know those conversations in the early days, SAP was brought in maybe at the end of the conversation, and even last year. But this year, I understand that was different.
Right, so this year they actually had SAP right in the room as partners and collaborators with both customers and partners that came from the ecosystem to talk to each other. The strategic SIG, I want you guys to think about it as a big tugboat, right? That's trying to move this humongous ship around or trying to steer it in a particular direction. So there is a lot of influence that come from the ASUG community and from the work that we do. We try to listen to the community. We try to represent that community when we are talking to those SAP points of contact. When SAP is in the room talking with us, they not only hear us vent, but they actually hear us come up with a solution to some of these problems. In the case of education, and I know that you can speak more about this kind of stuff, is how do we do online training for our users? Do I have to pay this trainer to come in and do 3 or 4 or 7 hours of education for my people? Can I just outsource that to the web and just have webinars? So these are the types of issues that we're taking care of and not necessarily providing it ourselves, right? So from an ASUG perspective, the volunteers, we don't provide these deliverables ourselves. SAP has to provide that. But what we do is we just kind of push them towards those deliverables.
And you mentioned some of the successes with the education. I understand the subscription library is one of the achievements you're really proud of.
Exactly.
Tell us a little bit about that.
And that is a whole new offering that SAP has. And really there are there's 3, but 2 predominant tracks. But instead of companies sending employees off-site to training only when the courses are available and paying for any travel expenses and that also at risk of the course being canceled, what they offer now is an online subscription for 1 year per named user so that a person can sign up for a very nominal fee and have full access to a library of training that they can visit at any time at their own pace from different perspectives, where they first kind of talk about what the thing is, they demo it, and then they give you the opportunity to kind of interact and answer questions. So it's a very much more cost-effective way for companies to actually train their employees. So that is one of the things that we had a session yesterday. As far as the details of that, we've had webinars on that. We're also currently working with Tim Breitweiser at SAP over in Germany, and SAP is in the process of bringing back the data services, what used to be traditionally called data integrator certification program. So even though it's not formal education per se, the certification program itself also falls under.
But that was a catalyst because you guys pushed for that,
exactly.
right? I mean, the data services was not in their roadmap at all, and it was because of us listening to the community and Tammy mostly with Paul Grill saying, "Wait a second, we need a path here. We need to understand what's going on with data services," and they're bringing it back. So that's a success for us.
And I think you should be really proud of that. And in the ASUG community, you hear still some rumblings 2-3 years later. Where is the voice of the business objects customer? Do you think that perception's changing?
That perception is changing, and I think that, and I'd like to hear your point of view as well, but that perception is changing. Can we do better? Sure. Is there a gap of communication between the strategic SIG and what we're doing for the community? Sure. I mean, we've been heads down for the past 2 years. There's been some management, or not management, but some leadership type of positions that have rolled off and into new roles and stuff like that. So, sure. I mean, I think that we've sent a lot of surveys. We understand what our user communities are and what they're expecting from us. Should we communicate that more broadly into the ecosystem? Yes, there's always need for more communication and more marketing for what we do.
Right.
Okay. And Tammy, I know you have a point of view on your...
last year we introduced a concept of having a virtual town hall where ASUG hosted for us online, and each of the members of the SIG kind of discussed the things that they had accomplished recently and are currently working on. And one of the things that came out of last year's Influencer Summit was the need for more volunteers. So for example, in the education segment, I've added on Sandy Brochi from the Cleveland Clinic, who's looking at a huge training challenge at the clinic as they go through upgrade, and Heather Sinkwitz from Metro Rural as well. And I think all of the other segments of the SIG have added on additional volunteers. And a recurring theme I heard this year was that we really need to get more people involved, because the more people we're getting involved, the more momentum that we're getting and the bigger the audience that we're getting. And we're also hearing from SAP that they're liking what they're seeing and how can they get to be more involved. So I think we're looking to do the town halls, I think on a more regular, probably quarterly basis, and start to listen more from the community on both sides, quality being one of the things that has come up in the past that we've tossed back and forth. each one of the 4 segments has a quality segment to it, but it's not something we're talking about a lot. So is that something maybe what we're going to do is branch off after this year? What we found at the Influencer Summit is maybe that's an area we need to branch off to.
And quality is just a word. I mean, how do you define quality? Is it quality by the product, quality by the service, the solution? I mean, what it is. So it kind of crosses all 4 pillars. And so we have to get better also at communicating with each other. And so what you're doing in training, somebody working with support kind of had to understand what's going on with the different facets of these pillars. So now we got this idea of the quality SAR, right? That's going to hopefully next year come up to speed and help us in that process.
Continuity is key.
Well, and we're also recognizing that we need to cross-pollinate a little more too, both within the strategic SIG and I think outside of the strategic SIG. We're going to see in the year ahead that we're going to need to reach out to the BI SIGs and some of the other SIGs and find better communication and coordination, because we're really seeing value. They're seeing value, we see value, we're understanding, and so I think the community is definitely seeing where this is headed.
No, I agree.
I think there is perhaps some confusion in the sense that there was a strategic SIG created to talk about the priorities, but there in fact are business object specific communities within the ASUG infrastructure where they're talking about the day-to-day stuff. And I also do know that at the chapter level, regionally based throughout the US and Canada, there are business objects contingencies. You know, there's lots of engagement in Florida and Atlanta and every other, Ohio. They have some really great subsets, and they built business objects content into their chapter data. So I think it's great what you're doing. You really have come a long way. You should be very proud.
Yes, we have.
And congratulations on your success. I appreciate your time today. And I know we'll be meeting with the rest of your colleagues in another session.
How about we talk about one more? I'm sorry,
Of
are you
course.
running out of time?
No,
Developer
I'm okay.
Wars?
Oh, you're right. My apologies.
Yes,
Let's talk about that, because that was a huge
Wars.
achievement for you this year.
One of the things that we wanted to do, not just take care of problems, but also engage the community. And so engagement for us is important. The more people that, like you said, the more people that come into the table and talk to us, the more of a voice we have together as a group, right? And ASUG provides a platform for us to do that. So we came up with an idea of creating the Developer Wars during the conference here, and doing for something that means something. So we got a charity to provide the data, so teams would sign up for this thing, and they have 24 hours to create deliverables essentially for this charity that the charity is going to be able to use. And so we are announcing who the charity is later on this afternoon at 6:30 when we have the Developer Wars. But that's another testament of our successes and how we try to engage that community and say, come to the table, talk to us, let's do something fun, you know, not just the problems.
Absolutely, and you know what, you're completely right, because we talk about community engagement, community awareness, demonstrate our success. There's so much more to come. So again, thank you for bringing that up. My apologies. That was absolutely, I know it's about data visualization.
Yes.
I understand some fun stuff. I've heard some hype on the Twitter feed. You're a little bit of those troublemakers.
We're behind closed doors right now, so you must have a band
I hear
to
they're
get in.
hunkering down, so I think that's really a great thing.
Yep.
Congratulations again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gina.
This is Gina Marchese with ASUG News. Thanks for joining us today. Please visit ASUG online to access proceedings and replays of our sessions.